Hey love bugs, it's another week of self-love here on my channel. I'm doing wall-to-wall self-love throughout the entirety of September. So if that's not your bag, you are in the wrong place. Come back in October where I'll be doing unboxings and talking about witchy stuff and all the rest of it. But for now, it's just self-love. That's all I'm ever doing. So today I want to talk about the importance of being able to have a spiritual practice that works for you, that's fizzy, that gets you feeling jazzed about this business of being alive and being on planet Earth, etc. And I want to talk about how you can stand strong in your right to have that spiritual practice and give time to it and devote yourself to it and see the payoff from doing that. The vast majority of people who are watching this video will either be living as part of a culture that doesn't really support emphasis on personal spiritual work, or they will be living in a culture which does support emphasis on personal spiritual work, but only within the Abrahamic monotheistic framework that is approved by the state and by the people, most of the people. There's a really fiddly way of saying that basically it can be difficult to be on an alternative path, a neo-pagan path, a spiritual path which looks witchy in any way or mystical, in a secular society where religion is not necessarily made into a big thing, or in a family structure where religion is demeaned and there's never really been any religious or spiritual framework. It will be difficult sometimes for you to feel as though your spiritual needs and your spiritual path are being respected and taken seriously. And then likewise, if you're in a situation where you are surrounded by kind of like the Christian God Squad, then you're equally going to be in a position where it's difficult for you to get your spiritual path appreciated and understood by people. It's going to be difficult for you to feel as though you have any support when it comes to making your spiritual pathway into a central focus of your life and giving time to it and making it into a priority. There is a possibility that your family members won't understand that they won't like it, that they won't support it, and in some cases that they might even try and stop you from doing it. So there are all kinds of obstacles when it comes to living within a cultural framework or within a society or family where for one reason or another your spiritual dedication and your spiritual path is not appreciated, not taken seriously. And so you can't really get anyone to co-sign on your desire to spend time in spiritual learning or spiritual practice. You can't get the people around you to get on board with it. You have to know for yourself that it is what you want to do, that it's what you want to spend your time on, that it works for you, that it's important to you, and that you want to witness the changes and the positive effects that are going on within you as a result of regular spiritual practice. And you need to know as a self-loving act that you don't necessarily need someone else to co-sign on your spiritual path in order for you to be able to prioritize it. You prioritize it as a self-loving act for you because it's a part of your truth and it's a part of what you want to do with the time that you have on this earth. Obviously you can't change an entire culture, you can't change everybody's minds, but you can certainly feel free to speak to your loved ones about how important it is to you. Even if they don't rate it and they don't understand it, you can set some boundaries around it and let people know that it's something that you want to dedicate your time to, and it's a no compromise zone. There are going to be so many different people in so many different kinds of situations watching this video, so I just want to urge you, if anything I'm saying now is resonating with you and you're thinking to yourself, yeah, I do need to set stronger boundaries around time spent in spiritual practice or time spent in solitude, I need to let people know that this stuff is non-negotiable, I would definitely recommend sitting with that, thinking about the extent to which you might want to start to put stronger boundaries around that stuff. And if people don't understand it in any other way, then just explain that it is good for you. It's good for your mental well-being. Explain that it enables you to be a better partner, a better parent, a better friend, you know, that it's good for your grey breadhead. And if that's still not enough of an acceptable answer, then sometimes it's important to think about the people you've got around you and whether or not those people really have your best interests at heart. In this lifetime, we find ourselves having to make a lot of different compromises, and at a certain point you have to decide, every one of us really as spiritual people have to decide if our spiritual life and our time spent in spiritual practice is going to be one of those things that is compromised, and to what extent is it going to be compromised. And I can't really think of a better time for me during the year than Self-Love September, the month that I've chosen to dedicate all month long to focusing on self-love, to have these kinds of of explorations within myself where I'm like, okay, what am I sacrificing? And is that okay with me? Is that something that can stand, or is that something that needs to be changed? And I would definitely ask you, to the extent that it's necessary for you to go on this exploration, to do so this month, and just think about whether or not you are compromising, whether or not you are downplaying the intrinsic importance of your spiritual path because you don't think other people would appreciate you spending time on it, or, you know, people around you are hostile towards it. Think about whether or not this situation can continue indefinitely, or if you want to actually make changes so that your time spent in spiritual practice and spiritual learning is at the very least respected as time that is important to you and that is non-negotiable. One of the things that I see people doing consistently that can be really harmful for them is putting their spiritual practice on the back burner first, never really prioritizing it, or never really owning how important it is and how much good it has done for them. And I think a lot of that can be to do with the way that the people around an individual respond to their spiritual practice. It's like not valued or not respected, or it's even resented or riled against. Maybe you've got someone in your life who's hostile towards it, or would rather that you just spent a lot more time with them than actually prioritizing spiritual practice, making time for it when you have spare time. Maybe somebody just doesn't understand why you wouldn't spend more time with them, or you wouldn't spend more time socially. And I think when we're thinking about self-love, we need to consider what we actually want and what is good for us and what makes a real difference in our lives. And if we're always demoting something, if we're always putting something on the back burner, convincing ourselves that it's okay with us to sacrifice it over and over on the altar of somebody else's needs a lot of the time, or somebody else's whims, then we have to ask ourselves, is that self-loving? Can we do better? Can we turn over a new leaf from now and actually feel like it's okay to have a spiritual practice? And for me, when I'm practicing on a consistent basis, when I'm sitting at my altar on a consistent basis, doing rituals, doing spell work, recognizing the phases of the moon and so on, I'm seeing the evidence of what it's doing to my mental health and my emotional well-being. I am recognizing what it's doing for me on a daily basis. I know it makes me into a better human being. I know that I make better, more empowered choices. I feel better about life. I feel fizzier about life. Everything is just a little bit more technicolor, you know, and everything is a little bit more HD. And I feel like I don't want to ignore that. I don't want to constantly put that thing on the back burner and have that be the thing that gets demoted to last place when my plate is very full. Don't get me wrong, my consistency is not at 100%. I fall off the wagon like everybody does. I have times where I'm more spiritually active or less spiritually active, but I definitely can't deny the incredibly strong positive effect that spiritual practice has on me. That is an awareness that I've seen through evidence over and over again, and I can't put that awareness back in a box now. I can't ignore it. Take a look at the times when you have been really invested in spiritual practice or spiritual learning, and ask yourself whether or not it had a really positive effect on you. Did it have a positive effect on your mindset? Did it help you through your challenges? Did it make you feel better about this crazy complex business of being a human being on this spinning rock that's hurtling through space? Was it good for you in some way? And if it was, why would you demote it? Why would you downplay the importance of it? There are so many facets of my spiritual path that are intimately linked to the concept of self-love. When I work with archetypes, when I walk with deities, I'm connecting to some of the most kick-ass, profoundly important parts of me. I'm looking into myself, and I'm looking, almost walking through some kind of hall filled with different mirrors, and within each mirror I see a reflection of a shard of my own brilliance, my own radiance, my own divinity, and I'm contacting those parts of me through the guises of these archetypes, these deities, these disembodied intelligences, these energies that I'm working with, these things that I'm choosing to embody and invoke. And that is a huge part for me of my self-love journey, and it's something that's undeniably a self-loving act. When I meditate, when I chant, when I do mantras and affirmations, I'm reminding myself of my power to be sovereign in my own life, and I'm giving myself the power to choose again, to choose differently, to know that I am not enslaved to a particular path, that I can choose a different one. I can choose one that works better for me. When I do ritual, I'm taking myself to all of these incredible places, not only beyond me, transpersonally and cosmically, but inside of me, recognizing myself as this incredible infinite terrain that I am, and visiting different places on the map of that terrain, and actually getting to know the territory of me and seeing myself as a cosmic being, but also as a very complicated and flawed and paradoxical human being, and learning to celebrate that. And when I pray, I'm really just connecting to the thread of life force that moves through me and through all things. And I'm asking to be attuned with it once more, so that I can use my instincts, so that I can really lean into the fabric of my reality, so that I can make decisions from a place that feels right, so that I can live by a higher code, so that I can unpick the stitching of the programming and the conditioning that I've been raised with, and know that I can live the way that I choose and not within the bondage of servitude that's been built up inside of me over time. So all of this stuff is hugely and markedly connected to self-love, and I'm not going to leave it by the roadside for someone else. No fucking way. It's given me too much. I recommend that you take some time to think about what your spiritual path has given to you, how it might be connected to self-love for you, and also how you would like it to be going forward. If you don't currently have an active spiritual path, how would you want to set one up? What would the framework look like, and how could you practice self-love through the vehicle of that spiritual path? If you have a spiritual path right now, but you don't feel like there's enough of that kind of stuff in it, and you don't really relate much to the energies that I've just spoken about, but you would like to relate to them, then really think about how you want to move your path in that direction. And part of it for you could be about dedicating yourself anew to your path, committing to it in a way that is deeper, and in a way that is about compromising less and drawing boundaries and you know, protective fortress type material around your spiritual path from now on, not letting people fuck with it, not letting yourself undermine it or devalue it, but actually putting it higher up on the table of things that you've got to do, putting it higher up on the to-do list, rather than constantly striking it off as the thing that can be left, as the thing that is surplus to requirements. We might get some thunder cracks in this video, guys. I'm looking outside at some really apocalyptic looking weather and some sideways rain pelting my window. So there might be, at some point or another, a thunder crack. You never know. My spiritual path does a lot of different things for me, but one thing it really does is it helps me to reconnect with myself as the character, the main character in my wondrous and unique story. And it helps me to kind of recognise the tapestry that's being created with every inhale and exhale and every step I take in the world. And it just helps me to think about my next move, my next action, the next thing that's good for me. It helps me to come back to a sense of clarity and get rid of all the distraction and really listen to myself. It comforts me. I am healed when I do spiritual work. I'm healed when I practice the craft. So, you know, for me, these... Oh God, I'm getting emotional. Oh my God, I'm healed by these things, you know. So for me, it's not optional, it's non-negotiable. Ask yourself if your spiritual practice needs to be the same way, baby cakes. Ask yourself that question, give yourself the answer. I really just want to go to my altar now, but let me just finish up. I have other points, I have other things I need to say, and then I'll pop to the altar. If your spiritual path is on hiatus right now, if you've got a lot on your plate, or you've never had a spiritual path before, and you're thinking that you want to resurrect it, or you want to start to create a framework, don't compare yourself to other people. And don't forget that you can start very, very small with just one weekly practice if you want to, or just reading a book that you think will help you to kind of move into the area of spiritual focus that you are about, that you think would be good for you. Do not convince yourself that your spiritual journey has to look like other people's. It simply doesn't. And furthermore, there is no point in trying to make decisions about your spiritual framework and telling yourself that those decisions are going to stick, and those decisions are going to be forever, and those decisions are going to last you for the rest of your life long, because essentially it's all progress. There's so much evolution in it. You will definitely find yourself down a weird side street, or over here in a weird eclectic carnival that you never read about, or you just end up somewhere that you didn't originally imagine yourself as getting to, and that location will be everything. And maybe you'll move on from that location, and there'll be a lot of surprises. You will surprise yourself, and you'll come up you'll come up with things in your learning that you that are attractive to you and that shine for you, and you want to go towards them. Basically what I'm saying is that your framework isn't devised over the course of a few hours or a couple of weeks. You don't just ready make something and say this is my spiritual journey, and you certainly oughtn't to be toxically comparing yourself to other people who do seem like they have a very sturdy framework and a really healthy spiritual journey, because that's their thing. It's never going to be fulfilling for you because it's not related to you. You know, you've got to find what really resonates deep down with you. Your spirituality can be what you want it to be, and it can have the focal point that feels right for you. When you are imbibing resources, when you're reading books, when you're reading blog posts, when you're watching videos, etc., do not feel obligated to take what other people are teaching and preaching and saying and praying and use that. Don't feel obligated to do that. You've got to sift through the resources with a critical mind, and that's a self-loving way of using resources like that. It's a self-loving way that doesn't discount your experiences, your needs, and the things that feel good for you. So don't put that stuff in a box and kick it under the bed while you're reading books or watching videos. Be critical always. Ask yourself, does that make me feel fizzy, sparkly, tingly? Is it a yes from me? Or is that something that I might leave on the shelf for later? Or is that something that really doesn't vibe with me at all? You are allowed to do that, and that is a very self-loving way, I think, of imbibing resources that are supposed to inspire you or help you to get further on your journey. You can move into regular spiritual practice on your own terms. If you want to think of God as nature, if it doesn't make sense for you to have deities, you don't want to work with personified deities don't call to you, that's not the kind of connection you think you can have, and you just want to see divinity or Godhead or whatever, the higher, the source, the prime mover, as the natural world and everything in it and everything that is the case, then you can totally do that. If you want to just begin with one simple card draw every day and journal a couple of sentences at your altar to try to get you more connected to who you are, then you can do that. If you don't want an altar or you can't have one, you don't need one. The world is your cathedral. You know, just go outside and be in a connected state of being. You can do whatever feels right to you. You can make a commitment which is as small and unintimidating and doable as you think it needs to be, so as not to get put off by the idea of having a regular spiritual practice. You can try different things. It's really about what flicks your switch. Make the journey into something which is self-loving rather than something that leaves you berating yourself or wishing that you had somebody else's altar set up or somebody else's apparently amazing spiritual experiences or whatever. This is really about you, and it's about figuring out what makes you tick, and it should be exciting, and it should be something that is nurturing for the self, not something that pits you against yourself and makes you into an enemy of yourself. Don't be afraid to get started. There are a lot of people that stay stuck in the reading area of things, where they're amassing information and they're thinking about different things that they could try, or they might be in the planning phases where they're planning to do a spell or a ritual or some manifestation work or work with some affirmations or do 30 days of card draws, and they're devising it in their mind and they're creatively visualizing how good it will be, but they don't get started. And a lot of that is to do with perfectionism. It's to do with the fear that what you're devising in your mind is not going to be as good as what actually materializes in reality. It's going to be different. That's something that we all should be able to accept, that whatever we devise in our minds, the reality is going to be different just purely by the fact that we're weaving it into being as the situation changes and the energies unfurl around us. So that needs to be something that's okay. It's not supposed to look exactly like the picture. The picture is a rough guide. The idea you've got in your head is a reference point for something that you're going to create, but you've got to allow what you actually do in reality to have the space that it needs to take shape in the organic way that it takes shape. And it shouldn't be disappointing if it's not the same as what you had in your mind. It's different, but that's because you've made it real, and by virtue of the fact that you've made it real, it's already infinitely more powerful. It already can do you so much more good. The benefits of it can now be witnessed, and if things don't feel right at first and you want to change up the plan or you want to do something different next time, at least you know, and you can keep experimenting. You can keep adding different things to the recipe and taking different things out of the recipe. You can perfect it, you can alchemize, you can refine. Do not be afraid to get started. Do not leave yourself on that perfection, the perfection hard shoulder, if you like, you know, parked over in the wayside of not wanting to do anything in case it's not as good as what you had in mind. The way that you figure out whether or not something is right for you and whether or not it could be good for you, even game-changing for you in life, is to do it. If you read 50 books about meditation, it's never going to get you anywhere as much as actually sitting down and practicing meditation for 10 minutes a day. There is a point at which you put the books down and you recognize that you actually have to just take a deep breath and move into action and try these things out. And that's the only way you're going to know. Just really sticking to something over a certain amount of time and bringing the discipline to actually execute the practice. That's how you're going to know whether or not it's any good for you. If it's not any good for you, there's a million and one other things you can try. But don't delay and end up kind of fossilizing into this shape of non-action. Don't do that to yourself. You deserve so much more. I would definitely recommend that a very self-loving mindset that you can bring to the proceedings is just simply to recognize that it's not all supposed to be plain sailing all the time. Nobody's spiritual practice is, I don't think. Everybody goes through their rough patches, everybody goes through confusions, everybody has messy evolutionary phases in the proceedings where they're not really sure what's going on anymore and their framework doesn't fit them anymore. People experience spiritual slumps and some people experience spiritual crises at certain points as well. And of course that's alongside what I discussed at the beginning of the video regarding dealing with the hostility and the lack of understanding from the outside world sometimes, from people in your life. So there's a lot of different things that can upset the apple cart at times, and you just have to keep recognizing what your pure intention is for practicing spirituality, why you're doing it. You know, it's finding the why and it's reconnecting to the why when you feel like you want to give up or you feel like there's too many obstacles in your way. Thunder! Oh, that sounds right nice. So yeah, be prepared for some challenging times. They are absolutely part of the process. They are not a sign that you're doing it wrong or that you need to give up. It's okay. Everybody goes through it. Sometimes with me, what I really like to do is just step away from everything, because I'm a bit of an over-egger of the pudding. I like to over-egg the fucking pudding big time with spirituality. I just get myself all in 6s and 7s. It's all in a pickle. And I need to just step back and boil everything down to just the essential. And I just start from there, really. If you want to know more about my thoughts on designing a spiritual practice that works, you know, bringing consistency to spiritual practice, I'll leave 2 or 3 videos down below that I've done on just this very subject, so you can get deeper into it and get a bit more of a meaty outlook from me if you would like to look at other video resources I've made on this topic. If you're listening to this video and you're realizing that spiritual practice and spiritual focus is something that you haven't really quite connected with the journey of self-love yet, and you would like to devise something, or you would like to go back to something that you had previously taken up but you dropped, I would recommend don't be too quick to take a label. Really know that you are allowed to just feel your way through and enjoy different things, learn different things, try and figure out what would be good for you. You don't need to take a label really quickly. So many people are running around trying to look for the place that they fit into. They're looking for the hole that fits their specific shape, and they want to lock in there and feel that good click and be like, oh, there we go, I'm home, this is where I belong, this is who I am, and this is me. And that's all from ego, and it's not usually helpful. And a lot of the time when we select a label, it's not the label we stick with. And then some people experience feelings of guilt about that, feelings of confusion around that. They're not sure why they picked the label they picked. Thor's in agreement with me there. I would just recommend not doing that to yourself. Basically, there's no need to take a label and put a lot of pressure on yourself, assigning yourself something that you might later not necessarily relate to, or might end up being just one of a number of things that have caught your eye and caught your attention and that you want to focus on. Fuck me, that is some serious rain. The raindrops are like as big as my palm. They're as big as the palm of my hand. That's crackers. The final thing that I want to say about honouring your spiritual practice and having your spiritual practice as a part of your self-love journey is that maybe it might be a good idea for you to focus on how you want your life to change, how you want your feelings about your life and yourself to change, etc., rather than on what you want to achieve in your studies and what you want to achieve externally in your practice. So for me, I don't really think so much anymore about things like, well, I want to master X many specific tarot decks and I want to learn these specific things and I want to read these books on my list and all the rest of it. I don't even think I want to do X many rituals by the end of the year or anything like that. What I'm actually much more about, to be honest with you, is what I want to feel like. That is ridiculous. Wow, okay. Sorry guys, the noise outside my window is really getting out of all control. But what I like to focus on, rather than focus on those external points of success or those external achievements, is more to think about how I want to feel having done consistent spiritual practice. I want to think about how I'd like to see my life change, how I'd like to see my outlook change, how much better I want to see myself feeling and doing in life with my different goals and stuff like that, and how I'm actually using the good energy and the good vibes of my spirituality to bring me a sense of positivity and momentum across all areas of my life. So it's really about how it's nurturing me and how it's making me into a more productive member of society and a more productive individual in general. Happier, healthier, focused more on what's important and less distracted by things that aren't important. If my spiritual path is giving me those things, I like to think of that as being more the achievement that I'm looking to measure. And for me, it used to be very much about like, oh, I want to read about this and I want to read about alchemy and I want to study these things and I want to get into this area and I want to tick off all these books and I want to do all this shit. And I just feel like now I'm looking more at how has my spiritual practice enabled me to deal with these external challenges this month. How do I feel like my spiritual practice is helping me with my working out or with my relationships or with business, with finance? And how do I feel after my meditations? How do I feel after doing my prayer beads or my devotionals or my rituals, you know? And I'm thinking about that much more, and that is my marker for success. So that's the final thing that I wanted to say in terms of just really making spirituality count for you. Thank you so much for watching this resource about self-love. I am putting out videos every Monday, Wednesday and Friday throughout the whole of September, and you can also find me over on my SoundCloud account every Sunday for the whole month talking about self-love as well in my Self-Love Sunday segments. So please just enjoy these resources. If you want to tell your own story or give your own tips or insights, you can use the hashtag self-love-sept and self-love-stories so that people can find you and enjoy your resources as well. And I'm going to be coming around and watching some stuff too. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch this. I really appreciate it, probably more than you know. Self-love's one of my favourite topics, and it's just really nice to be able to sit down and offer some insights to you. So much love and self-love. Until next time, blessed be. Oh, I found an altar space. Just set up here.